Are you using social data only for reporting? Are you scratching your head right now and thinking, what else can I use it for? Today's guest will be talking about making strategic decisions based on what you see in your data. Stay tuned. A next episode of Strategy Talks is coming your way right now.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Strategy Talks. I'm so excited that you're here. If you're here live with us, put questions right there in the comments and we'll see if we can get to them at the end. And if not, myself or my guests will answer them after the show. I want to especially welcome those who are here on the replay. Again, if you have questions, put hashtag replay in there so we know that you're watching it later. And of course, as always, a very, very happy welcome to all of those who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. I can't believe we're nearing the end of 2025 and we're talking about data, which is, of course, always very timely because in order to look ahead, you have to look at your data. So without much further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Steph. Steph and I have been connected since, 2013, 14.
Oh, so long.
A long time, maybe even earlier. And Steph now works for the team at Sprout Social. So, of course, lots of data there, right? Tell us, before we dive into strategic decisions and data, let's talk a little bit about Sprout. What do you do for Sprout, Steph?
Yeah, sure. One, thanks for having me. Super excited that we get to do this because, like you said, we've known each other for more than a decade, which is just insane numbers.
Crazy.
So as fast as social moves, like social friendships just like stay and hang on, and I love that. So at Sprout, the kind of work that I do, as most people know, Sprout Social is a social media management platform covering all the things: publishing, engagement, reporting, social listening. There's so many different features, obviously, of the platform. My role is I work as a manager on the professional services team. So if you'd like to get a consultant to kind of come alongside you in how you work with the platform, our team kind of comes in and can work inside Sprout with you, like help you optimize, help you understand your data, and how do you make decisions with the information that's there. Hint, hint, what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So I help manage that team. And I also was in that role for several years before I became the manager. So know it intimately, and kind of coming alongside customers that are either agencies, even Fortune 50 or somewhere in the middle, to just get the most out of the software and have a buddy that understands. Like, we speak the language, we get it.
That is really great, especially for, say, you're a company and you've been using Sprout Social, but maybe you have a new social media person to onboard, right? A new professional on the team, and being able to have somebody there that not just holds their hand, but kind of, shows them around, can be super valuable. So that's a service that I didn't even know Sprout offered. That's really, really cool to see. And yeah, you and I, literally, I think we met in 2015 at Social Media Marketing World for the first time. And I remember you coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Doreen." And that was just so cool. Like, having somebody recognize you from being friends online and then seeing in real life, like, this is who we look like. And this is funny. If you ever do this, guys, if you meet people on social, on LinkedIn or Facebook, and then you meet in real life, the first thing I always do is like look up and down, like, Are we the same height? It's always surprising. That is like, I love
It
doing that.
is.
Like,
Someone is either always much taller or much shorter than I anticipated because you just
yeah,
know people by their avatar.
yeah,
But yes, you made it so easy for me though because the orange glasses have been iconic for you. So
yeah,
I think you and I were real, we chatted on Twitter X,
yeah.
right? And I was like, I know her. Oh my God, I know her. Well, I don't know her, but I want to know her.
I know. And then we met again at Social Fresh and then Social Media Marketing World again. So
So funny.
it's been wonderful to see your journey as a business owner and then moving into your role at Sprout and move in there. So we're going to talk about using data for more than just reporting. So Steph, what is that stumbling block that us marketers seem to have? Like, why do so many of us only report the data but not use it for strategic decisions? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I have a theory on this
Okay,
about
I'm ready
why
for it.
this happens, okay? That is because every social marketer I've ever met is a unicorn, right? You have so many responsibilities, right? We are if you say someone is a social marketer, like that title comes with like 15 different things that you are actually responsible for.
Yeah.
So in your job being, ideate, strategize, like create content. You might be the creator. You're also then like the manager actually posting content. You're responding to the community. You're trying to keep up with trends of what's going on. You're doing competitive research. You're meeting with other teams and stakeholders. There's so many elements of that role that we tend to focus on the things that are highly visible. So
Mm.
we focus on my job as a social marketer is to put content out on social media, whether I'm part of the strategy or the creation or the actual like publishing, right, or engaging that community. What you do is highly visible. And when you get to like reporting, it's a check the box. I have to show that I did the thing that you already saw was very visible. But here I got these impressions, this engagement rate, right, this number of clicks, and you pass it on to the next person. So we don't spend any time actually analyzing it. I think a lot of social marketers are great at reporting, right? And you got a lot of tools, whether Sprout or otherwise, right, that do a lot of that for you. And you're like, great, here's my report. And you check the box, and there's not enough time to dedicate to actually analyzing and now using it. Or we kind of get lost in like, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I got the numbers I wanted. Good enough. Like, let's go.
All right. So I think you're onto something. I do agree that, especially when I was only a social media manager, right? When I started out as social media manager, when you and I knew each other in the beginning, and I think was how a lot of social media managers started, is before you know strategy, you just go by what the business owner says. I basically went in as a part of their team and I would take over posting. And so the business owner often dictated what I was posting. They would feed me content and say, post this event, post this. And so I wasn't necessarily responsible for the strategy, not until I started educating myself and figuring out and working with business owners with bigger businesses and business owners who did care about data, that they would come to me and say, well, what should we post? And that's when the strategic mind started going. I took a social media strategy course and learned how to analyze data and how to, kind of do that SWOT analysis and all those things. And so, but I think so many of us come into this role from different angles. And so there isn't really, and the other thing, let's be real, when you and I started, there was no college course on social media management or social media
Yeah.
professional, right? We either came from marketing or we came from communication or we came from, like me, from out of nowhere. I didn't have the education. I just started doing it because I'm good at talking. So if I'm good at talking and I can create stuff, I'm good at writing, I can create content. But now there's just this whole different thing that we need. We need the data in order to be successful with social. So let's dive into what you just said, right? Data-driven decision making.
Yes.
How does somebody start out to leverage some of this data that's there to make decisions for clients. So the first thing I want to talk about is who owns the data and who takes charge of talking about the data.
Yeah. So owning the data, I think that's a great question because there's a couple different areas that you get data from, right? You have data that's owned, you have data that's earned, and then you have like the outside industry competitive set of information that's just like out there. So when we look at what data is available to us, owned is like the data you get from like, I made this post on my Facebook page, I earned these impressions, these engagements, I earned this many responses to my X post, I got this many shares on LinkedIn. That's owned data from your profiles. So there's a lot of data that comes natively from those social networks, which we love, that tells you about how you perform. And you can measure against yourself and see what's working in my community, right? How do I'm going to use that data to decide, should I keep doing what I've been doing, right? Should I stop that, right? And kind of understand the stop or keep doing it, or can I make some improvements, right? What is my own data telling me? Then we have earned data. And the earned data is the conversations that happen on social that you are not part of. So we think about like with Sprout and with a lot of like larger platforms, we have social listening that allow us to go out and search for how many times did my brand get mentioned, but they didn't tag me. They talked about me on X, but they didn't tag my handle. They used our hashtag on Instagram, but like I didn't get like a notice, right? It didn't show up in my notification feed or show up in my inbox of my management tool that told me this happened to me because it happened on someone else's profile. And they were talking about me in that conversation. They were mentioning our products, right? Any of those things. That's earned social conversation. A lot of data that comes from that. That tells you what people care about. That tells you the sentiment of your brand, tells you things like market share of like maybe us versus them, of how many times people talk about them, how many times did they talk about, us. So that's going to tell me things like, where do I fit in the market? What am I doing really well? Is my messaging resonating with folks? And then we're going to have the third bucket of data, which is going to be our like competitive and industry insights. Like, tell me what they're doing.
Right.
So it could be, data from their own profiles, but what's publicly available, right? I can see how often my competitors are posting. I can see what they're posting. I can see public level engagements, but I can't see things like what impressions did they get? What engagement rate do they have? So there's different layers of what data is available to me at that level.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got lots of studies that come out, whether you are Sprout or Hootsuite, Agora Pulse, everybody's publishing information that says, here's what the industry averages are, right? Here's what's trending. Here's what's going on. Here's what this survey is telling us about what's working in the space. And so we have lots of data that comes from that. So we have these outside industry benchmarks, our earned conversation and our owned conversation. Lots of data. Some of it's yours and you have direct access to it. Some of it you have to find yourself, right? And some of it just gets sent to you, right? Because we're on the right email distribution list to know what's going on in the world.
Right. Okay. That's a really great explanation. So then we have access to this. We can find some of this data. We can gather the data. Then who should hold that data on the marketing team?
Yeah.
So what's next? So I'm trying to reverse engineer this. If somebody's watching this and they're a social media manager, or they're, creating content, or they're in charge of videos and they're working with a team and they're like, hey, I'm listening to Steph. I'm wondering what's going on with our data. Where is it? How do I get access to it? Who should hold the key to the data?
Right. I am of the mindset that data is everybody's responsibility, right? Because everything that you do and decisions that you make, while we have great intuition, I will find that most marketers and social media people I know, like, what's what. You have this feeling and you're like, this is the right way to go. But it's the rest of your stakeholders that need to get on board with your idea, that you just saying like, this is the right thing to do is not going to be enough. So data is everybody's responsibility. It should be accessible to everyone on the social team, whether you are a content creator, a manager, a community manager, right? You're the strategist, you're the marketing lead, or outside of just that social media team on the rest of like the marketing team in general, other key stakeholders. Make data accessible to everyone. Something that I've seen with some teams is you do have the space to have your own dedicated analyst, right? That's an ideal, like dream state. We've got somebody whose whole job is data. The reality of that, right, is not it's not the case for a lot of folks, especially small business owners, right? Small, agencies that are working with customers. It's unlikely that you have the space to dedicate to an analyst because you're so focused on outputs of those highly visible things, of content that's going out and assets, deliverables that are being created. So less likely you're going to have an analyst. So it's going to be like shared responsibility across the board.
So let's dive into that. So if you don't have dedicated analysts with everything that's going on with AI, could you, instead of having an analyst on your team, could you hire somebody to create a dashboard for you that puts all that data into one place? Would that be a good idea?
I love that plan. Yeah.
Okay.
If you've got the space, like get a freelancer, get, an agency who specializes. There's definitely agencies who specialize in data, right? The other piece too is you might have someone on your team who is especially keen to this and treat it like a project on their list, right? So I may be the social media manager, but I know how important that data is, and I know I could make better decisions. I could make more impactful posts and a better strategy if I had data available to me. So this is going to be my project. Q1, I'm going to get our data in order, right? So if I've got a social media management platform, I'm going to make sure all of my, my profiles are connected. Most of the time you've got them, right? But then I'm going to look at what reports are available. I'm going to look at creating some automation for, hey, I'm going to make sure that this report is delivered to me on a weekly cadence, or this report's delivered to me monthly. I'm going to book time on my own calendar to sit down and look at it and see what I pull out of it. Because it's one piece to get the data, but the piece that we talked about that's missing is being able to make a strategic decision because of the data that's there. Reporting is one thing. It's the other step that's missed, where you don't give yourself any time to look at it and see what it says. A lot of people are looking at it as like, green is good, red is bad. Okay, rough month, good month. And then they move on because I got to post this event. I got this campaign in place, right? I've got to keep moving.
All right.
So
that makes a lot of sense. So my next question to you, I've had a lot of questions. My next question pops into my head is that a job that one person should do? I know gathering it is great. If everybody has access to it is great. Should there be a strategic team meeting? Should there be a strategic or a team that discusses what they see, what they find, and make strategic decisions together as a team? Or do you think that so many people are tuned out that one person just makes that decision and owns it and then goes with it?
I think informed teams are much more powerful. So I think that if you're going to have someone own this as a project, right, we've got our reports, someone has to dedicate the time to look at it and interpret, right? What does that mean? What does that tell us? Does it tell us to start, stop, or continue something? Right. Those are something's going to fall in those categories. I'm either looking for confirmation that I'm on the right track and keep going, or I'm going to see this is a mistake. We need to stop this because it takes too much time, right? An investment, we're wasting it. It's not resonating, right? I'm going to get that information and be able to know to stop. Or I'm going to use data like maybe those earned conversations about what's happening when you're not in the room, right? Or the industry insights to know what to start doing. So if you think about it in that mindset of start, stop, continue, somebody has to look at that data and put information in those categories and then bring it back to the team and be like, here's what the data said. And then get everybody on board.
Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about the cadence. I heard you say that weekly, monthly. I am of the mind that when I start with a new company, I've been working with a startup this year, and we literally started from zero. So I was looking initially at the data every day. And then every week, and then every 2 weeks, every month. So what do you an established company that has a strategy in place, it's very different, correct? So
Yeah.
how do you determine the cadence? How do
Yeah,
you know like it's the right cadence?
for sure. Just like we were talking about how everybody needs access to the data, right? Not everybody, just because they need access to it, doesn't mean they all need it at the same cadence.
Mm.
So, how often you're looking at the data is going to depend on who you are in
Mm.
that organization. So, if I am the community manager, right, and I have a pulse on who the people are and and responding to messages and all those things, I'm probably looking at that data and that information. If not daily, I'm looking at it weekly. I'm looking at it far more often because I want to see that. I want to check those insights because I'm going to be the first to know if something needs to change more drastically, like more urgently. If I am the strategist, right, I'm
Mhm.
probably looking at it more on a monthly cadence to see, talk to me about the campaigns, look at the campaigns that were run. How is that performing? When things launch firsthand, just like you said, joining a startup, I'm going to check more often. I'm going to
Mhm.
do this look back and see what the trends have been. But if I'm just managing and I'm continuing, I'm probably looking at it once a month. If we're talking about now to like maybe CMO level, right? We're going all the way up to to the executive and senior leaders. They don't need to know weekly. They don't need to even know monthly, other than like high level information. But analysis of, hey, we're proposing that we change, right, a strategy, or we need to change the budget, how it's been. Those are the things they care about. I'm probably going to tell that more like on a quarterly basis to
Mm.
that senior leader because they've got other things they're worried about, and it's not how many impressions or what's the engagement rate, right? Or, oh, instead of doing 30-second videos, we're actually going to make them 20-second videos based on our testing that we did. They do not care. They
Right.
want the results that come out of that. But the
Yeah.
social media manager and content creator want those, right?
Yeah.
So they're looking at that data far more often than someone senior.
All right. So we talked about using data for strategic decisions. How about for crisis management? I
Yeah.
know that's kind of a different way, but I'm of the mind that, especially when a crisis comes, you've got to be prepared. How would you use data, or how would you use your knowledge of the data, the analysis, when a crisis happens? And we see some crazy stuff happen on social all the time, brands that are off script, or that just say silly things, or are bad
Yeah.
with, communication, or they put an AI bot in place and AI bot made some crazy promises. And,
Yeah.
when those things happen, what do we do with data then?
Yeah. I think when it comes to things like crisis, right? It's less about like what does the data tell me, and it's more about how fast can technology help me. So I would rely more on things like AI and automation for a crisis situation where I want to make sure that the system is telling me, like, and sending me an alert to say, hey, on average, your data says you get about 100 messages an hour, right? On Instagram, if you're a big brand, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I get 100 an hour. Last, like in the last 30 minutes, right? You've had 500, right? Here's an alert to tell you that something is wrong. So let the system, like an AI, help start analyzing some of that data so you can make a decision, right? I'm going to bring you back to focus on this. If you weren't monitoring it that closely, let a system send you this spike alert. So let the system use the
Mm.
data to make a decision so you can stay informed. When it does come to like reporting out on crisis situations, like using things like net sentiment, right, or sentiment analysis, period, to know, hey, here's where we normally are. This is what people typically feel about our brand. Nobody's ever 100%, right? So we're typically in this maybe 70% range, but being able to say, hey, there was this crisis, right? This is how, the world reacted. And yes, it sucked. Right? For 3 days, right? Sentiment tanked and our mentions skyrocketed. I can see that. But then I can look at that data, a week after and see, did it level out? Did we go back? Did we bounce back? Or did it have an actually detrimental effect on our brand to
Mm.
show what was the impact? So that's the stuff that the CMO, right, the customer, right, that you're working with, they want to know that more readily. So it's going to be a more of an ad hoc, like more timely report as things happen, but you
Mhm.
have to tell them what it means. Like you can tell them we got 7,000 messages and sentiment is like 2%, right? But it's the after that and the analysis and comparison to say, it sucked right now. This was rough for us right now. But did it matter?
Mm.
Did this have was this detrimental to our brand in some way? It was
Mm.
hard right then, and it's always hard for a social media manager, community manager in those
You
days.
take it to
Like,
heart. You take it to heart.
oh,
It's so
so hard.
yeah.
It's so hard, right? But some things are big crisis for 2 days. But in the long run, in the world of social, because things move so fast, it may be okay. It was
Yeah.
hard right then, but then I can tell you with data and analyze it and say, this is where we were, this is what happened, and now we're back, right? Or I can say, hey, you know what? This is lingering. Comments aren't still coming in, but we've seen a drop here. We have some work that needs to happen. And now the social team comes with data that then goes to, legal or comms or, someone else who's responsible for like brand reputation. Because social is going to report on what happened. It's
Right.
not your job to fix it.
Right.
But you can tell them what's
I
up.
hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Well, we have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to dive in before we leave in how we can use some of this social data for targeting or talking the right way to the right people. I heard you say social listening earlier. I think that is something that I'm not going to say all social media managers, but there's a group of new social media managers who, again, are not thinking as strategic as the more senior ones. They're just putting out content and they're hoping it will land. How can we use some of the data that we have to make sure that when we create content, that each time we do this, the content is going to land better and better and better each time? What are some of the things, I guess my question is, what do we need to look at? What are the indicators that we're talking to the right audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I love social listening for this use case. One we talked about earlier, social media managers, we tend to have like a gut instinct, right? We see, right, what's going on. We see the trends. You might be, it's on my For You page on TikTok. This is going to be great, right? But we miss that we are in our own little echo chamber in our algorithm that's been built brick by brick just for us. And you miss out on the conversations that are happening outside of your own social sphere. So social listening, I can come in and search for specific topics, hashtags, right, trending, whatever's going on, and test it against the world of social. So I'm going to put this into my social listening tool and I'm going to say, like, talk to me about whatever it is and have it kick back out. What's the sentiment of this conversation? Who is a part of this conversation? What big accounts, what big influencers are a part of this? Do I want my brand aligned to the people who are already part of this conversation? What other topics, like themes of conversation, are coming up when people talk about, I was just at a hockey game last night. People talk about hockey, right? What teams, right, are part of that conversation? If people talk about hockey, what players are part of that conversation? If they talk about this, what events are they talking about? They're talking about Stanley Cup, Winter Classic, right? All, a specific game, or are they talking historical? So there's so much context that can be learned from social listening to tell you where to guide your own thought process and conversation. So you're not just relying on your own instincts of this is going to be good. This feels good. Right.
Well, and that comes back to something that I feel very strongly about that is really hard to get through to the stakeholders in the C-suite, is that you're not your own ideal customer most of the time. Every once in a while you get, an owner who is their own ideal customer, has started a business because of something that happened in their life and they have this product or service. But most of the time, you are not your own ideal customer. So that's a very tough sell sometimes to say, this is why we're doing this. But then if you have data to back it up, that helps you move forward. So Stephanie, we're at the end of
my gosh
30 minutes. This was such a wonderful conversation. This is very different conversations than I've had. I've had conversations about data before, but I love the social data for strategic decisions. It is definitely where I live and where I live with my clients and the conversations that I'm having. But I love that we dove even deeper and I learned a thing or two. So
Hey, I love that.
Thank you so much. Where can people connect with you if they want to know more, follow you, know more about what you do, and potentially, check out Sprout Social? Where could they connect with you? What platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Best place to connect with me is definitely on LinkedIn. That's my primary. So just search out for Steph Hermanson on LinkedIn. Happy to connect there. Always publishing, insights from Sprout. And then of course, let me know if you want to check it out, right? There's always looking for more companies to come over and check out the cool things that we have going on under the hood over here. But would love to chat with anybody about data anytime. It's my love language. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much for being on Strategy Talks with me today. I will be back soon with another episode of Strategy Talks. Steph, thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening. Bye.
Hey, thank you.